Chapter 2, The Arrival of Newcomers. This scene bears a striking resemblance to a company's collapse, evoking a sense of despair among the dismissed employees. However, should the day come when the police station itself were to close its doors, the common folk might very well rejoice. Regrettably, this is but a daydream of the fantasists. Our world remains plagued by rampant banditry, and the plight of the police is far from reassuring. At a desk by the window in the office, Sima leisurely spun in his swivel chair, his face concealed by a white handkerchief, seemingly amused. When humanity acquires something that rightfully belongs to another, a smile often serves as the most poignant reflection of their psyche. The setting sun filtered through the blinds, casting a warm and beautiful glow, even compelling those contemplating suicide to pause and appreciate its beauty. Amidst this atmosphere of mixed emotions, a group of unusually cheerful individuals strode confidently past the despondent officers and into the office. The individuals who followed required no introduction. They were fellow colleagues from the Supernatural Investigation Division, equally intent on their own form of pillaging. Among them was a particularly imposing figure, a giant standing 2 meters tall. With a muscular inverted triangle physique, clad solely in a tight-fitting white tank top, his rugged muscles, coupled with a bushy beard and a scowling expression, evoked images of a wanted criminal on a poster. The unsightly hair beneath his arms only added to the discomfort, prompting the beleaguered officers to hasten their escape. Look at you, Iron Hammer, this is just the beginning. The golden-haired youth casually perched himself on the desk. As comfortable as if he were in his own home. You miserable rat, unlike you, I don't have a wealthy background. I've gone 3 months without work. At this rate, I'll have to resort to hauling goods at the docks. Iron Hammer complained. Enough of the bickering. Listen to me, Sima interjected, rising to survey the newcomers. Noting that there was one more than anticipated, however, he refrained from immediately addressing the matter, instead glancing at the rat. This time, it's a genuine assignment. The details will be delivered shortly, but before we begin the investigation, enlighten me as to why you are an hour late. Isn't it because of that damn director? The rat sighed in resignation. Everyone knew he was referring to the head of the National Security Bureau, that old codger who deliberately created obstacles, insisting we bring along a deadweight or else he wouldn't even buy our plane tickets. Damn it, if he riles me up, I'll expose his entire system. Without further elaboration, the additional individual stepped forward. She stood at 1.73 meters, her figure statuesque, her face strikingly beautiful, with eyes reminiscent of autumn waters and lips that exuded allure. Yet she was clad in a drab gray long coat, a white shirt, black trousers, and flat leather shoes, which seemed a disservice to her appearance. Even a rapist would struggle with the conflict between her flawless figure and her modest attire. She saluted crisply, reporting sir, Wu Lingwei, junior operative from the National Security Bureau, at your service. Is this the extra personnel that old man assigned to us? Sima scrutinized her from head to toe, his gaze devoid of any lewd intent. Only skepticism and disbelief. Don't jest. I've been a section chief for 15 years, and he treats my department like a dumping ground. I've encountered individuals with cognitive impairments, physiological issues, ambiguous orientations, and speech difficulties, but I have yet to meet anyone as stunning as you. Pray tell, what flaw do you possess? Reporting sir, I am mentally flawed, Wu Lingwei declared with conviction. Whenever I witness a crime or an injustice, I am compelled to see it prosecuted. Well, this little girl certainly has some spirit, doesn't she? However, we are a department dedicated to investigating supernatural entities, and it seems your scope for contribution is rather limited? Sima's tone unmistakably conveyed a sense of urgency to dismiss. No worries, Chief, as long as it involves combating crime, regardless of whether it pertains to humans or spirits, I shall exert every effort. Her voice resonated with confidence. Yet when mentioning ghosts, a hint of skepticism tinged her tone. Since you are so enthusiastic, I shall assign you to partner with Su Shiji. Upon Sima's declaration, all colleagues instantly stiffened, scrutinizing the newcomer. May I inquire about Su Shiji's responsibilities within the team? Wu Lingwei's voice softened as she curiously asked. He is quite an extraordinary individual, the only field investigator in our entire team assigned externally. In many respects, everyone here exists to support him. Sima was not lying. He simply omitted the fact that none of his previous partners had emerged unscathed. If one wishes to combat crime in our line of work, partnering with him is the most prudent choice. Indeed, thank you, Chief. Wu Lingwei's face illuminated with excitement as she began searching the crowd. May I ask who among you is Su Shiji? By the way, boss, has Su Shiji arrived? How's he? Inquired softly. He arrived an hour earlier than you all. Sleeping in the corner back there, adjusting to the time difference, Sima chuckled, pointing out the corner of the office where a black sleeping bag lay atop 4 large desks arranged to form a makeshift bed. From a distance, it resembled a silkworm cocoon, albeit the wrinkled surface bore an uncanny resemblance to a large fecal matter. Is it merely a journey from Lidu City to Handong City? What time difference is there to adjust to? This fellow seems to be increasingly inventive in his laziness, Tai Chui grumbled in annoyance. Wu Lingwei gradually turned away from the reporting captain and approached the table, casting a disdainful glance over it. Before even seeing the person's features, the sight had already extinguished her earlier fantasies of a heroic figure. Chief, is he truly the only field investigator you support? Wu Lingwei asked with a quiver in her voice. Her gaze revealing a plea for mercy. You all are quite noisy. A disgruntled voice emerged from the sleeping bag. The black cocoon or fecal matter like sleeping bag began to stir, instead of a butterfly emerging. A man clad in grey pajamas crawled out, though his beard was not as rugged as Tai Chui's. It had been 30 days since his last grooming. His disheveled black hair emitted a peculiar odor. Su Shiji merely scratched his scalp with one hand, yawned, and flakes of dandruff cascaded down like snowflakes, while the breath escaping his mouth was enough to induce nausea. It's good to see you awake. The boss just mentioned arranging a partner for you. Housie wore a look of anticipation, as if waiting for a spectacle. You can't be serious, boss. Are you trying to kill someone again? Su Shiji complained. Directing his gaze towards the smiling Sima, his words utterly bewildering Wu Lingwei. Look closely, kid. Standing before you is a beauty. Consider yourself fortunate. Sima appeared to be granting Su Shiji an immense favor. If you're afraid of death, you shouldn't be an investigator. I could easily find a wealthy patron to indulge in a life of luxury. Wu Lingwei coldly retorted with disdain, solely due to Su Shiji's unabashed contempt for her. You, my friend, seem rather stubborn, don't you? Su Shiji sighed and emerged completely from his sleeping bag, cross-legged in front of Wu Lingwei, rubbing his still drowsy eyes, taking a moment to scrutinize the obstinate girl before him. Let us see how long you can last. First, share your experiences. Housie, this woman is quite bothersome. Look into her background, trace her lineage for 3 generations. Su Shiji remarked indifferently, disregarding the displeased demeanor of the woman in front of him. Stifling a yawn, give me 30 seconds. With a smile, Housie opened his portable laptop and commenced his task. Chapter 3, The Murder Case of the Transforming Yang. Gathering, Housie's fingers danced across the keyboard with remarkable speed. His movements reminiscent of a soul-stirring piano performance, his body swaying unconsciously to an unseen rhythm. As the 30 seconds elapsed, his previously swaying form abruptly halted. He fixed his gaze upon the screen, whistling in disbelief as he regarded the striking beauty clad in masculine attire. Su Shiji, this girl is no ordinary individual. Housie chuckled. Graduated first in her class from the National Law School in 201X. Now 24 years old, a black belt in Taekwondo, and has also trained in mixed martial arts and karate. She has worked in the police department, the Industry and Commerce Bureau, the Tax Bureau, and even the Sanitation Bureau. Yet none of her positions lasted long. Each role praised her strong work capability, but noted her difficulty in being managed, her refusal to comply with organizational commands. 3 months ago, she joined the National Security Bureau as secretary to Minister Huang of the Political Department. However, a month ago, she kicked that fellow's precious into oblivion. Minister Huang is still recovering in the hospital. Didn't he actually burst? Wu Lingwei interjected softly. It was merely a case of those things being displaced and twisted. He provoked me first. I was merely acting in self-defense. No wonder the director decided to hand you over to us. It seems to be a conscious act of retribution. Sima had already deduced the director's thoughtful intentions. Considering that Minister Huang was his uncle by marriage. I see. With such competence, why remain here? Don't women typically fear ghosts and spirits? Su Shiji effortlessly leaped from the table, approached the corner, rummaging through his luggage to retrieve a basin, towel, toothpaste, toothbrush, and various other personal items akin to a grand relocation. He bypassed a disdainful Wu Lingwei and strode towards the exclusive bathroom connected to the office. Is this truly what constitutes an investigator? Wu Lingwei mused, observing Su Shiji's languid silhouette. If you possess enough strength, you will come to appreciate him in time, for Su Shiji is the finest investigator. I personally retrieved him from a mental institution 8 years ago. And this is a conviction I hold dear. Sima nodded resolutely, unaware that his introduction only deepened Wu Lingwei's aversion towards the eccentric man. Is everyone busy? As he spoke, the office door swung open, and the rotund director, who had just interacted with Sima that morning, entered with a beaming commercial smile, akin to a public relations duck, albeit severely overweight. Good morning, everyone. The investigators bowed ceremoniously to greet the director. Let us not put it that way. We are all public servants. The director appeared quite proud of his identity as a public servant. One wonders if he ever contemplated the implications of consuming the people. I am here merely to deliver the preliminary autopsy report and some information regarding the deceased. The director strode directly to Ouyang's side, placing a file on Sima's desk before hastily retreating as if fleeing from a plague. Why do I feel that everyone in our group is so insufferable? Wu Lingwei inadvertently voiced her thoughts, her candor being one of the primary reasons for her inability to remain in any position for long. Imagine a colleague embroiled in bribery accompanied by a blabbermouth who cannot conceal anything. Even if she were the sister-in-law of the president, no one would dare to keep her around. Insufferable, they are merely afraid of us. Soon you will understand what it means to live as an outsider. Huozi corrected Wu Lingwei's statement, having said that. He joined the others gathered around Sima. The autopsy report aligns closely with my assumptions. Sima perused the document that the director had specifically delivered, his tone relaxed. All 13 victims were under the age of 25, with no other injuries on their bodies. Each had met their demise by having their heads bitten off. Prior to their deaths, each male had engaged in vigorous sexual activity, their bodies nearly in a state of exhaustion. However, the fluid collected from each victim's lower body indicated it was all from the same woman. No way a single woman could have drained the life out of 13 robust men. That's absurd. Tai Chui felt an involuntary chill on his forehead. We must believe in science. Sima imparted these words with earnest gravity. The salacious nature of the conversation inevitably caught Wu Lingwei's attention. Though she did not step closer to eavesdrop, she missed not a single word spoken by Sima, yet a faint blush graced her originally fair complexion. Betraying her femininity, the identity of the deceased is rather peculiar. Have you noticed? Huozi, continuing to scrutinize the details, identified the anomaly. 6 victims had already been confirmed, including students, office workers, and waitstaff. However, these confirmed individuals were all located through cross-referencing missing persons reports, all of whom had vanished 3 days prior. Were all these individuals lured by the murderer? An unexpected sound emerged from the bathroom. As the tightly shut bathroom door swung open, a thick cloud of white steam billowed out. Reminiscent of a steam room, when Wu Lingwei's gaze wandered and fell upon the individual emerging from the bathroom, her only response was a gaping mouth. Rendered speechless, the disheveled man from earlier now wore a snug black t-shirt beneath a long, thin black casual coat, paired with faded jeans and casual leather shoes. His previous stubble had vanished, revealing a clean and handsome visage. His damp black hair glistened with droplets, yet he appeared remarkably invigorated. Although Su Shiji stood only 1.75 meters tall, his slender frame exuded a certain uprightness. This is truly surreal. Wu Lingwei couldn't help but exclaim. Ignoring the astonished woman, Su Shiji navigated through the crowd to Sima's desk. Snatching the documents from the section chief's hands and quickly flipping through them, the murderer has now transformed into a woman, likely a young beauty. Otherwise, it would be impossible to ensnare so many unsuspecting victims. Moreover, this individual appears to be adept in the arts of seduction, employing lethal methods that go beyond mere extraction of vitality, also claiming lives. However, to deliberately nurture food for 3 days and then consume it in one bite. Such a characteristic is indeed rare among the spirits and apparitions of China. It is highly likely that this is the work of an outsider. Su Shiji snapped the folder shut and returned it to Sima, as if he had already devised a plan. I believe this individual should not be difficult to locate. These beings are exceedingly dangerous. The sooner they are dealt with, the better. Su Shiji's intent was unmistakably non-negotiable. You may rest assured to handle this. Pay no heed to this fool's ramblings, Sima whispered with concern. Haozi, my car. Before Su Shiji could finish his sentence, Haozi had already tossed a set of keys into his hand. I brought them over for you earlier, but Molly is due for a major overhaul as well. The so-called Molly was the name of Su Shiji's vehicle. I'm off, Su Shiji declared, turning towards the exit, but after taking just 2 steps, he halted curiously and glanced back at his assigned partner. Can you drive? Su Shiji inquired, somewhat perplexed. Me. I obtained my C license during university. Why? Wu Lingwei responded, equally bewildered. As she spoke, Su Shiji tossed the keys he had just acquired toward Wu Lingwei, who effortlessly caught them and, upon looking down, was exhilarated to see the emblem of a Ferrari. Listen, if you're scared or incapable, I won't concern myself with whether you're a top scholar. I will end you before someone else gets the chance. That is my greatest mercy. Su Shiji's gaze was particularly grave, ensuring Wu Lingwei understood he was not jesting. The work of the Paranormal Investigation Department. Begins. Chapter 4. No one dares to claim unfairness upon arriving at the underground parking garage of the police station. It felt akin to stepping into an exhibition of luxury cars, albeit devoid of the glimmering models draped across hoods to tempt men. The vehicles here boasted uniquely personalized license plates, some even forming consecutive numbers from 1 to 10. Undoubtedly serving as an invincible pass, allowing them to run red lights and speed without fear of being stopped. Certain special plates could even command respect from traffic officers amidst the sea of automobiles. The most striking were the 4 gleaming red Ferraris parked side by side, their aerodynamic designs and splendid Mustang emblems making them a sight of opulence in a mid-sized developing city like Hanong. Anyone driving one of these cars around could scarcely avoid attracting attention from beautiful women, even those resembling mutated toads. Wu Lingwei glanced down at the car keys in her hand, then at the license plates adorned with the insignia of the Paranormal Investigation Department. Her heart inevitably racing. After all, she was still a mere mortal. Naturally, she held a profound appreciation for such machines, amassed through wealth. I say, partner, our department is quite impressive, isn't it, to be able to drive such magnificent cars? Wu Lingwei could hardly believe it. A low-ranking civil servant in this country possessing such luxuries seemed almost surreal. She could scarcely trust her eyes. Was this truly a vehicle? The dark red hue appeared as though it had been steeped in blood, and its distinctive exterior indicated it was from the now-defunct Beetle series. Setting aside these observations, the dust on the windshields made it seem as though it had just been unearthed. The only pristine aspects of this car were its front and rear bumpers. Crafted from pure steel robust enough to be bulletproof. It is rather ludicrous that the front of the vehicle still bears the license plate of a paranormal investigation specialty, accompanied by a dust-laden, dilapidated Mustang emblem. "What are you dawdling for? Get in," called Su Shiji, as he naturally opened the passenger door. Wu Lingwei unconsciously settled into the seat of the Mary, only to realize, upon placing her hands on the steering wheel, that she could scarcely see the scenery ahead. "Are we truly driving this car?" Wu Lingwei inquired with a quavering voice, feeling somewhat duped. Why could others drive such fine vehicles? Just be content. Su Shiji activated the windshield wipers, and two rusted, pitiful blades commenced their labor, scraping against the glass with a jarring noise. "Before you arrived, I had already wrecked 4 of their prized cars. The most severe incident sent 17 pedestrians to the hospital, 3 of whom only survived thanks to emergency aid. If it weren't for my 25th birthday last year, when they gifted me this Mary, you would have been relegated to cycling to work with me." Ah, this explains why, aside from the new bumper, everything else is old. Wu Lingwei could only muster a resigned smile. "Almost." Su Shiji sighed, delivering a punch to the petite storage compartment before him, causing the door to fall away with a cloud of dust, from which a swarm of disturbed moths surged forth, escaping through the open window. He casually retrieved a white pillbox from within, devoid of any name or label, its unmarked exterior prompting thoughts of illicit aphrodisiac tablets. He poured 2 pills into his hand, unhesitatingly tossing them into his mouth and chewing them as if they were mere nutritional supplements. "What are you consuming?" Wu Lingwei's curiosity was palpable. "Viagra. Would you like a pill?" Su Shiji's expression remained utterly unchanged. "Tch, have you never seen a pig run after eating pork? Viagra is blue." Wu Lingwei felt a twinge of annoyance at Su Shiji's crass humor. "Quite knowledgeable, aren't you? Does your boyfriend partake often?" Su Shiji seemed completely unfazed by her darkening demeanor. "No time to waste, let us go." The scenery ahead was now becoming discernible, and Wu Lingwei pressed down on the accelerator, bringing the battered Beetle to life. As the dark red vehicle exited the precinct's courtyard, the elderly gatekeeper shed tears for the first time in decades, not out of admiration for the officer's integrity, but rather from the noxious black fumes belched by the vehicle. Cruising through the streets of Handong City, the only solace lay in witnessing the gradual evolution of this urban landscape. Towering buildings adorned with protective scaffolding dotted the surroundings, indicative of ongoing construction. In accordance with the National Economic Development Strategy, which promotes the West through the Central Region, Handong City flourished more each day. Wealthy entrepreneurs, brandishing their titles, flocked to this pivotal central city in search of fortune, gradually bringing Handong City closer to the scale and atmosphere of coastal cities in Z country. Regrettably, only the city itself drew nearer, not its people. Yet another traffic light. Wu Lingwei could no longer endure the silence. Turning her head in irritation towards her dozing partner, "Where on earth do you intend to go? It's been an hour. Could you at least specify a destination? Is it truly exhilarating to meander about the city in this heap of junk? You are truly a woman incapable of stillness, devoid of even the slightest patience, yet you fancy yourself a detective. Perhaps it would be more fitting for you to pursue the so-called great work of a wealthy mistress, as you claim." Su Shiji did not even bother to turn his face, habitually mocking her. As he agreed to accompany her for another half hour, the frustrated Wu Lingwei could only watch as the traffic light turned green, pressing the accelerator to navigate through the expansive intersection before her. Suddenly Su Shiji glanced towards the pedestrian crossing across the street, his demeanor shifting slightly as he halted the vehicle at the crosswalk. "Girl," his tone grew frigid, a command laced with authority. "Brother, that area is off limits. Let us discuss it a bit further back." Wu Lingwei disregarded the so-called prince of collisions beside her, considering him a mere violator of traffic rules. She slightly pressed down on the accelerator, eager to pass through more swiftly, but at that moment, Wu Lingwei experienced a horrifying incident. As the car neared the crosswalk Su Shiji had indicated, this madman abruptly slammed the brakes, bringing the vehicle to a jarring stop behind the Beetle. Misfortune befell another driver, who swerved the steering wheel in a panic, leading to a chain reaction of rear-end collisions, with the 17th vehicle finally coming to a halt. The vast intersection resembled a scene from an action film, plumes of white smoke billowing from the crumpled hoods of the cars. Observing the couple, they appeared to be university students. The young man, well-groomed, embraced his girlfriend, staring blankly at the grand spectacle of the accident unfolding on the road. "Stop being so childish. Is killing him truly what you desire?" Su Shiji's calm voice served as a persuasion, yet his gaze was fixated on the intangible space beside the boy. For everyone else, it may have merely been air, but to Su Shiji, it manifested as a hazy image of a dark-haired girl, standing barefoot in a pristine white dress, tears cascading down her cheeks uncontrollably. Moments ago, she had wished to push the boy into the path of an oncoming vehicle. "Who are you?" the boy, oblivious to Su Shiji's subtle shift in gaze, asked in confusion. "Kid, perhaps you should visit the grave of the one who once loved you. You are parading around with a beauty while she can only linger beside you, witnessing how you forget her. Is that not a touch unfair?" Upon finishing, Su Shiji's eyes reflected profound sorrow. He urged the bewildered Wu Lingwei, who was lost in her thoughts, to start the car and drive away into the distance. After absorbing Su Shiji's counsel, the boy's complexion instantly turned ashen, collapsing to the ground in a kneel. Chapter 5, an unexpected intrusion into the red light district, uncertain if it was due to the hit-and-run incident. Wu Lingwei's heart remained suspended in anxiety, her foot on the accelerator trembling involuntarily, causing the vehicle to jolt erratically. Su Shiji, however, seemed unfazed, comfortably reclining in his seat while continuing to survey the unfamiliar city. After much hesitation and inner turmoil, Wu Lingwei posed a question she herself found ludicrous. Can you see ghosts? Was this truly the sort of inquiry one would expect from a distinguished law school prodigy? Su Shiji scoffed with derision. There was indeed a ghost standing beside that boy just now, wasn't he there? Wu Lingwei gazed intently ahead at the road, her words piquing Su Shiji's interest. Su Shiji scrutinized his driving companion with a serious demeanor, tentatively inquiring, can you see it too? So, it truly exists. Suddenly, Wu Lingwei swerved to the side and braked hard, causing Su Shiji to lurch forward instinctively had he not reacted promptly, bracing himself against the door and grasping the overhead handle. He would have surely flown through the windshield. How could this be? We live in a modern society, electricity is ubiquitous, so how could there be any specters? This is mere superstition, a deception, Wu Lingwei muttered to herself in an odd manner, her smile frozen and lifeless, resembling that of a corpse. Back when I was in the psychiatric hospital, my fellow patients would behave similarly, just take a deep breath, and everything would be fine. Su Shiji's method of offering comfort was rather peculiar. I am being serious. Why would ghosts even exist? Wu Lingwei fixed her gaze on Su Shiji, who remained unperturbed despite having witnessed a ghost, yearning for an answer, her beautiful eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Do you wish to vanish into thin air after death, leaving no trace behind? Su Shiji's counter-question left Wu Lingwei speechless. The so-called ghosts are but remnants of one's life, a longing for loved ones? An insatiable desire for material possessions, or even a deep-seated hatred towards certain individuals. Once a person departs this world, those who harbor such sentiments become phantoms, lingering in the realm, striving to fulfill their desires before being reincarnated. Yet, if one cannot let go or forget, the opportunity for rebirth eludes them, rendering them as wandering souls, lost and forsaken. But why must they disturb my existence? Wu Lingwei trembled as she wrapped her arms tightly around herself, tears finally cascading down her cheeks, crying like a child. I have done nothing wrong, yet they persistently haunt me. Although she could not see them, she could distinctly sense their presence, since she could remember. She had always felt surrounded by such entities. When she confided in her parents, they merely glared at her in anger, questioning her sanity. These are real beings. Why do they refuse to believe me? So you began to deceive yourself, telling yourself they do not exist, that it is merely a figment of your imagination. Su Shiji continued to lean against the car door, sighing as he observed the vehicles passing by, feeling a twinge of happiness for those within, for they were free from such burdens. How could you possibly know what I am thinking? Wu Lingwei asked, wiping her tears with effort, bewildered. Because once, I was just like you. Yet you are more fortunate. I lack even the ability to deceive myself. Su Shiji chuckled ruefully and continued, since that fateful car accident 8 years ago, I have possessed the ability to see ghosts. Though it is a gift I never wished for. Henceforth, whether I desire it or not, the only figures that dance before my eyes, apart from the living, are the deceased. I can sense their every expression, hear their every word. Many of these wretched souls are simply incapable of accepting the truth of their own demise. Thus, when they discover our kind, those who can sense the presence of the living, they delight in surrounding us, engaging in conversation, absurdly attempting to prove their own existence. In the initial month, I was engulfed by fear more than anyone else, confiding in my family, only to have them send me to a psychiatric hospital, where I was restrained to a bed each day and medicated with drugs meant for the deranged. It was until Sima Laude extricated me from that institution. How tragic. Humanity is such a pitiable creature. Finding solace in comparison or upon learning of Su Shiji's troubled past, Wu Lingwei's anxious heart gradually calmed, her mind whispering that at least she was not the most wretched. Must you behave as if we are in a Korean drama? Drive swiftly and take a left at the upcoming intersection. Su Shiji truly wished to avoid discussing his past. Had he not shared a similar history, he would rather die than delve into it. Stirring the pain within. Realizing her lapse, Wu Lingwei restarted the dilapidated vehicle, merging onto the highway, turning left as directed by Su Shiji. Unexpectedly, they found themselves in a red light district. The so-called red light district is merely a place where prostitutes ply their trade, often composed of small, unremarkable salons, devoid of any legitimate barbers, filled instead with scantily clad women, posing provocatively to entice lecherous patrons. In many respects, the prosperity of a city can be gauged by the flourishing of such establishments. If a city cannot even sustain its prostitutes, one ought to consider relocating in search of survival. Stop the car. Another calm command. This time, Wu Lingwei promptly pressed the brakes, not wishing to cause 2 major accidents in a single day. I will investigate. Wait for me here. With that, Su Shiji retrieved the unlabeled pill bottle, consumed 2 tablets, and nonchalantly opened the car door. Investigating in such a place, every cell in Wu Lingwei's body doubted the rationale. Why would one require medication to conduct an investigation? Do you insist that I acknowledge I am here for illicit purposes? Su Shiji chuckled sarcastically. If such a notion brings you comfort, then let it be that I am indeed here for such reasons. Shaking off his flimsy black coat, Su Shiji strolled along a street lined with red salons, his gaze scrutinizing the ladies through the glass doors, no different from the patrons selecting them. No, his gaze was more meticulous. Earnest and professional. Damn it, just when I began to view you differently, you engage in such behavior. Wu Lingwei forcefully struck the steering wheel, at a loss on how to categorize this peculiar partner. However, if he truly intended to solicit, and she was to stand guard for him, Wu Lingwei had already determined her next course of action, to genuinely expose his little secret. Chapter 6, the fox spirit finally revealed, halting before an inconspicuous salon. Su Shiji's demeanor starkly contrasted with that of the other patrons. Typically, men entering such establishments do so furtively, fidgeting, fearful of encountering acquaintances, feeling even more disgraceful than a thief. As for Su Shiji, he epitomizes the archetype of a frequenter of brothels. Not only does he meticulously scrutinize each salon along the way, but after careful consideration, he finally halts before the third last establishment at the end of the street. A peculiar smile, which Wu Lingwei dubbed a lascivious grin, emerged on his calm visage. The salon's proprietor undoubtedly shared the sentiment as he swung open the glass door, ushering Su Shiji inside and promptly shutting the door behind them. Beast, witnessing Su Shiji stride in without a hint of hesitation or shame, Wu Lingwei scornfully cursed. Barely 10 minutes had passed when the glass door swung open once more, revealing a familiar silhouette. Could it be so soon? Wu Lingwei found no provocation in her words, and as she prepared to unleash a mocking laugh, she caught sight of the woman who emerged alongside Su Shiji, clad in a form-fitting black leather dress. The hem was so short that a mere tilt of her head would reveal its contents. The strapless design showcased her alabaster shoulders, her delicate skin glistening under the neon lights, standing at a statuesque height of 178 centimeters, paired with a visage as youthful as a student. This woman was undoubtedly a siren in the eyes of men. Even the self-assured Wu Lingwei felt a twinge of inadequacy in comparison. As she watched Su Shiji approach, arm in arm with the taller harlot, an impulse surged within her to leap from the car and unleash her fury upon him. This pair of brazen lovers turned into a dimly lit alley adjacent to the red light district. Vanishing from her view, unable to remain seated any longer, Wu Lingwei exited the vehicle in frustration, slamming the door with such force that it nearly detached from its hinges. She stormed toward the alley where Su Shiji had disappeared, her face a canvas of rage. In the shadowy passageway halfway through, Su Shiji halted, turning to regard the woman he had summoned, his expression serene, devoid of the peculiar smile he had worn upon first encountering her. Here, perhaps. Su Shiji was reluctant to proceed further. Is this the place? The woman glanced about. Despite the desolate stretch of the alley, it was far from an ideal venue for such encounters. You truly are stingy. Unwilling even to cover the cost of a room. At this juncture, the expected indignation was absent from the harlot's countenance, replaced instead by a sultry smile as she nestled against Su Shiji's chest, guiding him toward the wall beside them. The stench emanating from the nearby trash bin and sewer would have deterred an ordinary individual. Not only would they struggle to engage in intimacy, but they would be hailed as a paragon among sanitation workers for merely enduring the odor. Alas, who could blame you for being so handsome? My heart races for you, and I am willing to indulge your desires. Her delicate finger traced circles on Su Shiji's chest. Her seductive prowess would undoubtedly earn her top accolades in a nightclub. What is your name? Leaning against the cold wall, Su Shiji seemed utterly unfazed. Xiao Dai, please refrain from asking such unromantic questions. Let us engage in something pleasurable. With that, Xiao Dai boldly reached to unfasten Su Shiji's pants. Please, enough with the pretense. I have no desire to bestow my first time upon a fellow afflicted with body odor. At a crucial moment, Su Shiji seized Xiao Dai's hand, which was moving beneath him, and fixed his gaze upon the young lady before him, who wore an expression of astonishment. We are all perceptive individuals. I have no inclination for subterfuge, nor do I wish to intrude upon your business. I merely seek to inquire a question. Who are you? With a flick of her wrist, Xiao Dai extricated herself from Su Shiji's grasp and took a step back, the tenderness in her eyes replaced by vigilance. If you are inquiring about my identity, I am a national paranormal investigator. Do you require to see my credentials? Su Shiji introduced himself casually, his hands tucked into the pockets of his trench coat. No need. Your aura is rather peculiar, and your intuition surpasses that of ordinary humans by several magnitudes. If you were merely an average person, that would indeed be surprising. Xiao Dai readily accepted Su Shiji's assertion. This is also the reason you are willing to engage with me, is it not? After all, attracting yang energy is your nature. The more robust and intuitively gifted a man is, the more effective he becomes for cultivation. Su Shiji essentially used his own body as bait, luring out the fox concealed within this sordid establishment. If you have inquiries, do not hesitate. Today has been quite unfortunate, as I initially believed I had struck gold by finding a gem, only to discover a rogue officer instead rubbing her wrist where Su Shiji had grasped her. Xiao Dai wore an expression of displeasure. You are the fox spirit of this city and a master of enchanting techniques. Have you encountered any strange kindred spirits of late, those who also rely on enchantment to seduce men? Su Shiji delved into the crux of the matter. It seems you too encounter troublesome situations. A smirk of triumph graced Xiao Dai's lips, a sense of vindication coursing through her. Regarding the individual you mentioned, I indeed possess some information. However, what makes you think I would divulge it? You have yet to pay for the services rendered. So, your implication is. Su Shiji grasped the situation, observing the woman before him nibbling on her lip, her demeanor teasing. Surrender your virginity to me, and I shall reveal the information you seek. Xiao Dai spoke with an air of calm, not perceiving her demand as unreasonable. Conversely, had it been another man, he would likely have begun to disrobe by now. My apologies, but I am not in the mood today. My little brother is asleep. So you shall have to wait. Su Shiji's words fell like a bucket of cold water, dousing Xiao Dai with a chilling realization. Do you take me for a fool? Either strip now or get lost. Do not hinder me from conducting my business, Xiao Dai retorted in anger. At that moment, Wu Lingwei, who had been searching for them, appeared at the alley's entrance, casting a scornful glance at the two. Su Shiji for the first time believed in the adage that eyes could kill. Su Shiji, you scoundrel, you truly went to solicit a prostitute. You even had me stand guard for you. Do you take me for some sort of fool? Wu Lingwei's ire grew with each word. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. First, take a moment to comprehend the situation. As he spoke, Su Shiji retrieved a small glass vial from his pocket, his left hand deftly flicking it, splattering a transparent liquid onto Xiao Dai's delicate shoulder. A sharp cry pierced the air, causing the previously composed Xiao Dai to recoil in terror, leaping back in disbelief as she half-squatted, resting on one knee against the wall. Her expression twisted in anguish, her breath quickening. She glared furiously at the man before her, her once brown pupils transformed into a blood-red hue. What have you unleashed? At this moment, even a fool could discern that Su Shiji was not merely engaging in a visit to a brothel. Wu Lingwei hastened to Su Shiji's side, keeping a vigilant eye on the monstrous figure against the wall. You bastard, how dare you betray me? Xiao Dai spat in fury, her voice starting to distort as her delicate features sprouted orange fur. Multiplying in quantity, her body expanded uncontrollably, and the garments that had enveloped her exquisite form were utterly torn asunder. Witnessing the unfolding spectacle, Wu Lingwei's gaze turned completely vacant, her mind a blank slate. As if all the knowledge she had ever acquired had collapsed in an instant. After a fleeting moment, a terrifying fox, stretching 3 meters in length, emerged before them. 3 massive tails swayed gracefully behind it, and its fearsome visage echoed its rage towards Su Shiji, sharp teeth rivaling those of a fierce tiger or lion. This is a bustling city. I have no desire to stir trouble. I will remember today's debt and settle it with you later. Despite her anger, Xiao Dai did not wish to incite chaos. She turned and began to flee down the alley, but after only a couple of steps, she felt her strength abruptly drain away, causing her to collapse to the ground. Casting a sidelong glance back, she saw Su Shiji gripping her tail with a peculiar black glove, an insidious grin plastered across his face, leaving her uncertain as to who the true monster was. It is said that the power of a fox spirit is concentrated in its tail. It seems the legends are not mere fanciful tales. Su Shiji remarked, exerting pressure on her tail, provoking the massive fox to convulse uncontrollably. Do not jest with me, Xiao Dai gasped vigorously, unable to believe that even if the tail was a weakness, it was impossible for a mortal to restrain the power of a fox spirit? Did you not notice that my gloves are rather unique? Su Shiji's words drew Xiao Dai's attention to his right hand, which bore a fingerless leather glove that seemed unremarkable. However, upon noticing the 4 peculiar black stones embedded in the forefinger section, her pupils dilated involuntarily. So you are already aware. What you see embedded here are relics forged from the remains of enlightened monks after their passing, quite precious and particularly effective against little demons like you. If I so desire, I could effortlessly snap your tail barehanded. Would you care to experience such a sensation? It is said that cultivating a single tail requires 100 years. I wonder if that holds true? You die. Concede. After a fierce gasp, Xiao Dai finally relinquished any notion of resistance. Chapter 7. Terror begins to spread. Lying on the cold, filthy ground, the massive 3-tailed fox's breathing gradually steadied. Xiao Dai could only glare at the figure gripping her tail with her fierce, predatory eyes, while he maintained a blank expression, adorned with an odious smile. 2 days prior, I encountered a peculiar creature. Xiao Dai seemed to realize that the individual behind her was a complete scoundrel, and thus she spoke up. She transformed into a woman clad in a white dress with flowing black hair, a quintessential beauty. It was nighttime, and a robust man was gazing at me from the entrance of my shop. Just as I was about to make my move, she struck from across the street. With merely a glance, she ensnared my prey, casting her enchantment with an effortless grace. Remarkably adept, she must be an ancient and formidable creature. Don't tell me you simply stood by as she whisked away your quarry. Su Shiji was eager to learn the rest of the tale. Do you truly think I am so easily bullied? Xiao Dai retorted with a hint of disdain in her eyes. I followed her to her lair, where many men, ensnared by her charms, lay in a state of utter exposure. It was evident that her intentions transcended mere siphoning of vitality. There was a sinister motive of silencing them as well. Then, my esteemed Miss Fox, might you disclose her precise whereabouts? Su Shiji rarely employed such formalities. Why should I? Shadai replied with a touch of arrogance. At that moment, Su Shiji exerted pressure with his right hand, causing Shadai to emit a muffled groan. All right, you've intimidated me. I shall speak, the beleaguered Fox beseeched, aware that Su Shiji's concessions were not easily earned. She is located in an abandoned textile factory on the outskirts of the West City. If you cannot find it, go purchase a map. Thank you. Su Shiji released his grip on the fox's tail, straightened his posture, and naturally removed his gloves. Shadai swiftly leaped 3 meters away, turning to face Su Shiji, revealing her sharp canines in a menacing display. Su Shiji turned his back, making his way towards the entrance without acknowledging the hostile fox behind him. Meanwhile, Wu Lingwei stood frozen in place, her legs trembling uncontrollably, terrified by Shadai. Why are you still staring? The foxes at the zoo are far more adorable. Su Shiji patted Wu Lingwei's shoulder, his habitual sarcasm resurfacing. It seems like she wants to devour you. Wu Lingwei was uncertain of the intent behind Xiao Jie's gaze. Perhaps she merely wished to tear apart the men surrounding her. Kid, I've taken note of you. Don't forget your promise. I intend to claim your virginity. With that, the enormous fox transformed back into the guise of a beautiful woman. Though her alabaster skin was devoid of any covering, her alluring form enticingly bare. After a few agile leaps, Xiao Dai ascended to the rooftop, vanishing into the urban night. Upon returning to his vehicle, Su Shiji's phone rang, the ringtone reminiscent of an old-fashioned lullaby, both peculiar and outdated. Howsy, have you uncovered any useful information? The caller ID revealed Su Shiji was already familiar with the individual's name, bypassing any superfluous pleasantries and getting straight to the point. After a lengthy search, I have correlated the time of death, the nature of the demise, and various clues, leading me to a creature that fits the description remarkably well. The sound of a mouse squeaking through the microphone was accompanied by the rhythmic tapping of a keyboard. In Japan's yokai banshoki, there is a record of a female demon that transforms from a spider into human form, known to seduce robust men. On the third dawn after the seduction, this demon would devour the victim's head. This creature is referred to as Luo Xanfu. Once the call ended, Su Shiji finally had the inclination to glance at his partner. He found Wu Lingwei resting her hands on the steering wheel, her gaze still remarkably dazed. Come on, it's just a fox. Is there really a need to be this anxious? Su Shiji did not perceive anything peculiar in his words. A fox. Wu Lingwei elongated the syllable as she directed her attention towards Su Shiji. Is it truly that large of a fox, with 3 tails, no less? Why didn't you tell me sooner that you were going to meet a vixen? I wouldn't have bothered to tag along. For heaven's sake, take a look in the mirror. With that expression of yours, as if you were seeing a lecture. Even if I had 10 mouths, I couldn't clarify. Enough of this idle chatter. Drive quickly. Do you know how to get to the western suburbs of the city? Su Shiji was no longer in the mood to squander time there. A glance at his watch revealed that there was still over an hour until dawn. Oddly enough, just a few ordinary exchanges with Su Shiji made even the most difficult issues seem effortlessly forgettable. For now, let us attribute it all to this person being exceedingly irritating, to the point of being unforgettable. The Petite Mary, exhaling black smoke, re-entered the road, heading toward the western suburbs of the city. The journey was remarkably tranquil. Wu Lingwei refrained from uttering any unnecessary words, focusing intently on driving. Meanwhile, Su Shiji had grown even quieter. Devoid of any leisurely desire to enjoy the scenery, becoming especially alert. It was as though a drunken man had been tied beneath a showerhead, with icy water cascading down. For Su Shiji, that invigorating cold water represented the peculiarity of his job. Yet, he was unaware that this assignment was unlike any he had encountered before. Terror was slowly beginning to engulf this unfortunate city. Chapter 8, the scent of intense demonic energy. Time slipped by, and as the Mary sped into the outskirts of the city, the road conditions improved, though the surrounding vehicles were pitifully sparse. On the 20-meter-wide asphalt road, only this vintage car traveled in solitude. Devoid of streetlights, whether it was a wiring issue or merely a cost-saving measure remained uncertain. Occasionally, a vehicle would pass by, causing one's heart to leap, like a specter in the night. Wu Lingwei, gripping the steering wheel, was often startled by the oncoming headlights, her instinctive reaction causing her to jerk the wheel, weaving along an S-shaped path, revealing her vulnerable side. However, it was not only Wu Lingwei who felt fear. Su Shiji clutched the overhead handle tightly, the seatbelt binding him as though he were a criminal. Many times, he felt an impulse to seize the wheel himself. Perhaps that would be a tad safer. The journey was fraught with tension but free from peril, except for a minor scrape when forcing a van off the road into a nearby pond. The Mary bravely endured Wu Lingwei's driving, finally stopping beside a clump of grass. Where did you learn to drive? At an amusement park? Surely you must have purchased your driver's license. Su Shiji only dared to turn his head and speak once the vehicle came to a halt, his tone laced with a tremor. It's my fault. Ever since I encountered that specter, I have been unable to find peace. Just moments ago, I passed 3 cemeteries, and I can't shake the feeling that something is lurking beside me. Wu Lingwei exclaimed in distress, "It's not just circling around you, there is something even clinging to you." Su Shiji corrected her misunderstanding. Wu Lingwei instantly flung open the car door and dashed out. Frantically swatting at her back as if trying to shake off a snail, her arms flailing wildly. A poor woman. Su Shiji sighed as he stepped out of the vehicle, disregarding his seemingly deranged companion, and instead retrieved the car keys to open the trunk. Beginning to rummage through it, after a brief interval, Wu Lingwei turned around to see Su Shiji toss an object her way, which she instinctively caught the moment she held it. A refreshing sensation coursed through her body. Curiously, she opened her palm to reveal a smiling Maitreya Buddha pendant necklace. What does this mean? Wu Lingwei gazed at Su Shiji in confusion, only to find him wearing an equally puzzled expression. His trench coat had been replaced by a white sleeveless bodysuit, adorned with unsightly black patterns resembling writhing serpents. Moreover, he was now burdened with a hefty golf bag slung over his shoulder. As if preparing for a game, "Put it on, since you fear ghosts, it will serve as a talisman against evil," Su Shiji said nonchalantly. "Wear it." Wu Lingwei held the Maitreya Buddha pendant before her. Her eyes filled with indignation. "This is not even jade, it's merely a piece of ordinary green plastic, so poorly crafted that even a child would disdain to wear it. What an embarrassment." "What, are you dismissing it?" Su Shiji shot her a scornful glance. "I found this at the monk's temple during my last visit to Wutai Mountain, beneath the massive statue of the Tathagata. It has been there for at least a year or two. Steeped in incense and surrounded by chanting scriptures, infused with the Buddha's essence, its protective properties far surpass those of any jade Buddha consecrated by so-called masters. Please don't return it to me." Su Shiji stepped closer to Wu Lingwei, feigning an attempt to snatch it back. "Am I not allowed to wear it?" Wu Lingwei swiftly donned the pendant around her neck and tucked it beneath her clothing. The moment the Buddha touched her skin, she felt an echo of the aura Su Shiji had described. "Are you leaving me here all alone?" Wu Lingwei surveyed her surroundings, swallowing hard in trepidation. "Surely this must be a mistake. There isn't even a streetlight in sight. How desolate. What are you afraid of? You are, after all, a national police officer. If it's a person, just retrieve your gun from the trunk and deal with him. As for wandering spirits, the Buddha I just gifted you should suffice." Su Shiji pondered what other terrifying entities could exist. Was it an earthquake, perhaps? I think I should follow you. After all, I am your partner. And it would be unreasonable to handle this case alone. With that, Wu Lingwei inched closer to Su Shiji, wearing a forced smile. This was a once-in-a-century scene. Typically, Wu Lingwei exuded an air of fearless bravado. "Ah, this is your own choice." Su Shiji did not offer further objections and turned to stride into the overgrown grass, his feet sinking into the muddy ground as he made his way toward the factory. Wu Lingwei followed closely behind like a devoted admirer trailing a celebrity, quietly clutching the fabric of Su Shiji's shirt for reassurance. This journey marked their first venture together. The air was imbued with the distinct fragrance of the grass. While the incessant chirping of various insects filled their ears, the moon hung in the sky, radiating a brilliance more luminous than ever before. After navigating through dense undergrowth, they finally arrived at a patch of sandy stone. Su Shiji glanced down at his casual leather shoes, realizing that even after 3 washes, they would never regain their former glory, leaving him somewhat disheartened. Meanwhile, Wu Lingwei surveyed the factory building before her, 3 stories high. Modest in size, with windows that were either shattered or cloaked in dust, a clear indication of its prolonged neglect. "What was your name again?" Su Shiji had forgotten. "Once we enter, refrain from speaking. Maintain a distance of no less than 5 meters from me. And do not stray more than 6 meters away. Regardless of what you see or feel, treat it as though you were watching a horror film. Do you have a favorite song?" Su Shiji calmly instructed. This being the greatest leniency he would extend to Wu Lingwei. I don't know any songs, just childhood nursery rhymes, like 2 tigers." Wu Lingwei admitted with a hint of embarrassment, lamenting that while others pursued celebrities, she had devoted her time to studying, leaving her with no leisure for such trivialities. "Just that one then. Hum it quietly, keep your voice down, and sing it silently in your heart. Have you understood?" Su Shiji reiterated patiently. Wu Lingwei, unusually obedient, nodded and began to mentally sing. "Let us proceed." Su Shiji smiled faintly, turning to stride toward the sturdy wooden door. Chapter 9, Torn Webs. With a deep breath and hands tucked into his pockets, Su Shiji delivered a forceful kick to the old wooden door of the factory, sending clouds of dust cascading down like rain. However, the door merely swayed twice before falling silent, exhibiting a notable lack of respect. "Sister, did you not promise to assist?" Su Shiji sighed in resignation. Wu Lingwei remained silent, her lips twitching involuntarily. Moments ago, she had regarded Su Shiji with reverence akin to that of a master, yet now her spirits had dampened considerably. With an elegant descent, she moved as gracefully as a celestial being. Su Shiji said nothing, enveloped in an unusual quietude. Under different circumstances, he would have offered a sarcastic remark, yet now, he simply observed as the imposing wooden door creaked open and collapsed to the ground. Stirring another cloud of dust. A mere trick, Su Shiji mused, disinterested in flattery. He stepped onto the fallen door and effortlessly entered the domain of Luo Xinfang, despite her discontent with Su Shiji's demeanor. Wu Lingwei felt an involuntary chill as she followed him inside. Adhering to his commands, she maintained a 5-meter distance, daring not to stray any closer. Her gaze swept across the barren factory. Nothing remained except for the omnipresent dust and expansive spider webs in the corners. This place appeared cleaner than a site ravaged by thieves, raising questions about the necessity of locking the doors at all. Moonlight filtered through countless holes in the roof, infiltrating this forsaken land. Ensuring that darkness did not entirely reign over the factory, flickering between light and shadow like the society it mirrored. After meticulously scrutinizing the factory, Wu Lingwei unconsciously smiled, her anxious heart finally at ease. The legendary monster had not materialized, and she detected not even a hint of something amiss. She dismissed it as the cunning fox spirit's deliberate ploy to deceive Su Shiji with false information. Although, as a civil servant, she ought not to harbor such thoughts, Wu Lingwei could not disguise her relief at the absence of the creature. Stop right there. Su Shiji abruptly halted in the center of the factory. A substantial beam of cohesive moonlight streaming through a gaping hole above, casting him in a spotlight akin to a protagonist awaiting a grand performance. Wu Lingwei obediently stood frozen in place. Swallowing hard to come out, I am not in the mood for hide-and-seek. Su Shiji's voice was soft, yet in the sealed confines of the factory, even the slightest whisper resonated clearly after a tense 10 seconds. There was still no sign of movement. Are you unable to speak Chinese, or do you simply choose not to emerge? Su Shiji's impatience was palpable. Standing behind him, Wu Lingwei could not help but tremble slightly. Her fear encompassed not only the entity Su Shiji called forth but also Su Shiji himself. The aura emanating from him had shifted, the intense malice unmasked and laid bare before her. Wu Lingwei could not fathom why she felt this way, but she truly believed that Su Shiji at this moment resembled a malevolent specter. Your Mandarin is quite commendable, traveling all this way from Japan and even brushing up on your foreign language. How thoughtful of you. Su Shiji's sarcasm knew no bounds, indifferent to the nature of his target. If you are a tourist, consider me your immigration officer. If you are a thief, I shall be your law enforcer. If you are a monster who has taken a life, then I am the one sent to claim yours. Su Shiji's explanation was unequivocal. Claim my life. The feminine voice chuckled softly, melodious as ever. Find me first, and then we shall see. That's what you said. Su Shiji lowered his head, a sinister smile curling at the corners of his mouth. Suddenly, he thrust his hands forward into the air, his arms shaking with exertion as if he were tearing something asunder. The sight of Su Shiji grappling alone in place was unnerving. Wu Lingwei, filled with concern, was about to step forward when she noticed distinct fissures forming in the air around Su Shiji's hands. She rubbed her eyes in disbelief, yet the cracks remained, spreading like a virus in all directions. A low murmur escaped, and with a surge of strength, Su Shiji finally tore apart whatever it was he sought to rend. In an instant, like shattering glass, countless shards cascaded to the ground, vanishing into the air. Looking again, the factory remained unchanged, yet now, from the ceiling's apex, a glistening, honeycombed web materialized before Su Shiji. A dozen bear men were ensnared within. Bizarrely devoid of fear in the snow-white, flowing dress enveloped a slender figure, standing at approximately 153 centimeters in height, yet evoking no sense of diminutiveness. Instead, it exuded a delicate charm. Her cascading long hair shimmered softly under the moonlight, and her arms, akin to exquisite sculptures crafted by a master artisan, seemed to possess a beauty achievable only on the plaster form of Venus. You have found her. The girl shook her hands tightly behind her back, a childlike, innocent smile illuminating her face. The dimples revealed in her smile were irresistibly alluring. Could such a creature also be a monster? Observing the young girl, who appeared to be no older than 16 or 17, Wu Lingwei could not help but murmur in bewilderment. Chapter 10, 8 terrifying limbs, like a fairy from a painting. How many could witness such a vision in reality? And here stood the fairy before him, smiling. How many men could possibly resist, forget the allure of enchantment? Merely this captivating smile was sufficient to stir any man's heart. Unless he were physiologically impaired, I never anticipated you could even tear apart my barrier. This is no feat achievable by an ordinary mortal. Might you be so kind as to share your name? The girl gracefully approached Su Shiji, her steps light, her gaze imbued with raw temptation, her petite tongue gliding across her rosy lower lip. Heavens, with such a bewitching creature before him, even knowing she bore the disease, a man would still be ensnared. The girl was now mere inches away, smiling as she faced Su Shiji, her gentle breath caressing his face, carrying the fragrance of youthful orchids. Standing a short distance away, Wu Lingwei could no longer contain herself. Just as she prepared to intervene, Su Shiji suddenly moved. You are not as inept in martial arts as you claimed. Wu Lingwei, rather than feeling pity, was perplexed by Su Shiji's remarkable prowess. This level of skill could not have been attained without at least 5 years of rigorous training. Who told you I was inept? Su Shiji responded dismissively. Then what about earlier? Wu Lingwei was increasingly confounded. If his martial arts were so proficient, why did he need to handle opening the door himself? Please, I practice combat techniques to deal with monsters. Tasks like opening doors are beneath my station. Su Shiji's arguments were logical, leaving no room for rebuttal. Wu Lingwei stood there, her teeth clenched in frustration, for understanding Su Shiji's words in reverse implied that her own practice of combat techniques was solely for performing such menial tasks with measured strides. Su Shiji approached the girl convulsing on the ground, entirely devoid of guilt for having struck a beautiful woman, still in pain. Why not reveal your true form? This tedious transformation is meaningless. Women are not what I pursue. Su Shiji softly admonished. You, that's impossible. You've already inhaled my essence. The girl trembled as she lifted her gaze to the approaching demon, unable to believe her own words. Enchantment, is it? Apologies, but there is something I neglected to mention. I have been under the influence of a psychotropic substance for 8 years. Your enchantment lacks the potency to sedate me. A wicked smile curled at the corners of Su Shiji's mouth. He halted before the girl, lifting his right leg high as if performing an aerial split. Without hesitation, he brought his leg down with unimaginable speed, targeting the Wu Lingwei, unable to bear the sight of brain matter splattering. Closed her eyes tightly, with a resounding thud. Silence enveloped the scene once more. Trembling, Wu Lingwei slowly opened her eyes, only to be confronted by a sight that was entirely unexpected. The girl who had moments ago been curled up before Su Shiji now lay sprawled upon the enormous web behind him. With a powerful kick that cut through the air, Su Shiji stomped heavily on the ground, sending dust soaring to a height of over half a meter. You little brat, I have already retreated step by step. Why do you persist in pushing me? At this moment, the girl had lost all semblance of youthful innocence, her form inverted upon the web, appearing utterly grotesque. Your logic is flawed. You are allowed to kill. Yet others cannot seek retribution. Su Shiji chuckled lightly as he turned towards the ball bag he had set down. If that is the case, do not blame me. The girl's voice grew hoarse as she spoke the last words. Wu Lingwei watched in horror, her mouth agape, her legs trembling, unable to support her as she sank to the ground. All the methods Su Shiji had entrusted to her faded from her mind. Leaving her in a void of panic, all she knew was that the girl on the web began to transform. The thick, dark fur erupted from beneath her clothing, and 8 horrifying limbs burst forth from her sides with a sudden ferocity. In a matter of mere seconds, a vibrant young girl had morphed into a black spider the size of a car. The only feature that remained unchanged was her face, though her eyes had transformed into dozens of inky pupils. And her mouth was filled with fangs protruding at least 10 centimeters long, starkly white against the darkness. The sight was enough to terrify anyone into a state of shock. I told you not to come over here. Su Shiji sighed in resignation as he gazed at the trembling Wu Lingwei on the ground. Though he had his back turned to the monstrous transformation of the woman, it was evident that to become such a captivating beauty, she must have been exceedingly hideous beneath the surface. He crouched in front of the ball bag, casually unzipping it and rummaging through its contents without haste. The fearsome creature had no intention of waiting for him. Su Shiji's disruption had already caused her to miss her mealtime. At that moment, the spider's belly was empty, and the man before her radiated an aura of pure young energy, making this terrifying being salivate with hunger. It propelled itself forward on its 8 grotesque legs, dozens of eyes fixated on Su Shiji's neck. Watch out! Wu Lingwei, no longer concerned with fear, cried out in desperation, not wanting to witness her partner's demise. Even if he was the insufferable Su Shiji. I didn't want to say this. Suddenly Su Shiji halted in his search, standing up with a black object clutched in both hands. The massive spider opened its gaping maw, launching itself with tremendous force towards its unsuspecting prey. Still turned away. Tai Shan Lao Jun, heed my command. In an instant, the atmosphere shifted, centered around Su Shiji. The heavy dust on the ground surged outward like a tsunami. In an instant, the object in Su Shiji's hand erupted with a blinding golden light. Just as Wu Lingwei closed her eyes for a fleeting moment, the still figure spun with such rapidity that it seemed to leave an afterimage, the golden object striking her lovely profile with precision. A horrifying event transpired. The enormous spider soared through the air as if struck by a truck, accelerating sideways and crashing through the walls of the factory. When Wu Lingwei opened her eyes, all she beheld was Su Shiji, standing resolutely in place, wielding a heavy sword with an air of coldness, while several severed spider fangs spun in the air. How handsome! Wu Lingwei could not help but marvel inwardly. Chapter 11, The Exorcism Manuscript. As the dazzling golden light gradually faded, the true form of the object in Su Shiji's hand was revealed. It was a dark wooden sword broad enough to fit 5 fingers, measuring over a meter in length, exuding the unique fragrance of peachwood. The sword's body was unadorned, rendering the earlier golden light akin to an illusion. With a charismatic flourish, Su Shiji swung the sword, revealing only half of his face, the smile at the corner of his mouth imbued with a hint of wicked charm, utterly enticing. The several fangs of the spider, which had been twirling in midair, fell to the ground with a series of crisp sounds. Ding ding ding. Awakening Wu Lingwei from her stupor. No, this is all an illusion. Wu Lingwei abruptly sprang to her feet, desperately slapping her cheeks as if to expel the horrific thoughts that had invaded her mind. Su Shiji assumed she was merely startled and had no time to attend to her frenzy. He turned and, sword in hand, pursued the direction in which the spider had fled. Upon reaching the wilderness, he surveyed his surroundings, yet found no trace of any figure. Suddenly looking up, he saw the enormous spider perched atop the rooftop. Its grotesque form rendered even more fearsome against the backdrop of the bright moon. However, its human-like face appeared somewhat ludicrous, despite having regrown half of its teeth, the side of its face, struck by the sword, bulged with repulsive pustules, resembling a burn. What a peculiar weapon, that it could not heal the wound. The spider let out a low, anguished moan, experiencing this excruciating pain for the first time in centuries. This was the millennium-old peachwood sword, a treasure of Ma Shan. Regrettably, the newly appointed Taoist priest, a gambling man, had sold it to me to settle his debts. A mere 300, quite a bargain, wouldn't you say? Su Shiji boasted about the origins of his divine weapon, and simply hearing it could make one feel as though they might bleed from frustration. I will kill you, the enraged spider roared, opening its gaping maw, unleashing countless slender strands of silk that shot forth like bullets, instantly forming a dense web in the sky, leaving no escape. However, Su Shiji's response was even more audacious. He drew the sword behind him, standing immobile, allowing the spider's web to envelop him entirely. Much like a small fish caught in a fisherman's net, the spider atop the rooftop let out a cold laugh, leaping forward once more, pouncing upon its prey, causing half of the factory roof to collapse beneath its weight. Such creatures are the most detestable, Su Shiji thought with a sigh. Many legs but little wit. Suddenly a transformation occurred around him. The serpentine pattern on his shirt glowed with a blood-red aura, and the web of silk encasing him ignited with azure infernal flames, incinerating it entirely. Who could have anticipated that the bizarre pattern was, in fact, a demon exorcising scripture? Witnessing such a scene, it is likely that many would feel sympathy for the wretched creature, having encountered a heartless demon. Distressed, Wu Lingwei felt an overwhelming urge to crush her phone. After ending the call, she promptly reported to the police, claiming that someone was plotting a murder. Once the call was made, Wu Lingwei felt a slight sense of relief. After all, humanity is a sorrowful creature, and the presence of companions can alleviate some of the fear. However, just as Wu Lingwei began to relax, a series of mournful wails echoed through the air. The sound alone was enough to instill dread. With a flicker of conscience, she trembled as she approached the gaping hole created by Luo's infus, concerned for Su Shiji's safety as she peered to discern what had transpired. Yet what she beheld was entirely different from her expectations. In a vast, uncultivated field, the once mighty demon now appeared utterly desolate. Its 8 enormous limbs had been brutally severed by Su Shiji, leaving only one still trembling and barely supporting its immense frame. However, for such a colossal body, it was of no consequence. Lying on the cold, muddy ground, Luo's infus gasped for breath, while Su Shiji stood effortlessly before her, sword in one hand, his attire untouched by even a speck of dust. The outcome was already determined. Well, your case is closed. Remember not to be a demon in your next life. Perhaps consider becoming a comfort woman, a specialty of your kind, although it may be arduous. There is little danger, and you need not worry about food and drink, as you can work while lying down. Su Shiji delicately held the hilt of the peachwood sword, poised above Luo's infus's forehead. Suddenly, the dying demon erupted into maniacal laughter, its voice a grotesque and terrifying sound. Stop your ghastly wailing, it's late, others wish to sleep too. Su Shiji felt no pity for the demon beneath him. Kill me, but do not think that my death will end everything. The night parade of 100 demons has only just begun. As long as you continue as a demon hunter, you can await your demise. Luo's infus's words darkened Su Shiji's countenance. The calm expression he had worn vanished, leaving only a pallid visage akin to that of the dead. His cold gaze halted Luo's infus's derisive laughter. For Luo's infus, it was the first moment of genuine fear she had felt towards Su Shiji in their battle thus far. You will never comprehend that for some, living is far more agonizing than dying. Su Shiji gently released his grip on the sword hilt, and the black peachwood sword plunged straight down, piercing through the pitiful demon's skull as if it were tofu. Was this the conclusion or merely the beginning? No one could say. Chapter 12. Kindness requires forgiveness. The wind swept across the tranquil earth, causing the grass to sway and rustle softly. The air was infused with the fragrance of wildflowers, pure and untainted by human intervention, bringing a sense of serenity to the soul. Su Shiji stood upon this vast expanse, confronting the lifeless demon, devoid of any complex or superfluous emotions. To him, it was merely another task completed. Yet instinctively, he sensed that this matter was far from straightforward. He effortlessly withdrew the ancient peachwood sword from Luo's infus's head, and crimson blood gushed forth as an unexpected transformation unfolded. The deceased colossal spider suddenly emanated a delicate white glow, dissipating into the wind like fireflies. Even the blood that clung to the sword shimmered with the same ethereal light before gradually vanishing. Occasionally, from the luminescent carcass, blue orbs of light would emerge, some dancing with the breeze, aimlessly drifting away. Others would sink into the earth as if returning to their roots like fallen leaves. Wu Lingwei unconsciously stepped out of the factory. Strolling over to Su Shiji's side, the two stood in serene silence, observing the luminous points fluttering around them, as though this were a private fireworks display meant solely for their eyes. When Wu Lingwei beheld those clusters of blue light, an inexplicable sense of familiarity washed over her. What are they? She could not help but inquire, despite her reluctance to shatter the tranquility of the moment. People, a wave of fear coursed through Wu Lingwei. Those consumed by monsters, whether human or soul, could not reincarnate. They would be trapped within the bodies of the beasts. Their longings, desires, and obsessions would transform into the monster's power. The higher the quality of the soul, the mightier the monster, making them all the more formidable to confront. Only by slaying the monster could the imprisoned souls attain liberation. Su Shiji gazed at the drifting souls, a flicker of sorrow crossing his eyes. Did you join the paranormal division to save these unfortunate souls? Wu Lingwei envisioned the birth of a hero. I am not as noble as you imagine, Su Shiji replied dismissively, for he truly cared little for empty accolades. I joined the paranormal division for two reasons. Initially, I was confined in a psychiatric hospital, and the formidable Sima promised freedom if I enlisted. The second reason, just then, a piercing siren approached, shattering the tranquility of the wilderness. You called for hype? Su Shiji exclaimed, casting a disgruntled glance at his partner, using colloquial slang to address the public servants. Because I was concerned for your safety, Wu Lingwei stammered, avoiding Su Shiji's scrutinizing gaze, akin to a schoolchild caught without homework facing a teacher's sister. Could you exhibit some common sense? Why summon them? We are the police. Furthermore, even if I were in danger, could they truly assist? Would they merely stand by and spit at the monster? Su Shiji's voice trembled slightly with exasperation as he turned away, retreating towards the factory. Yet, he had barely taken a few steps when a squad of armed police, clad in bulletproof vests and helmets, stormed in. Upon sighting Su Shiji, they unhesitatingly raised their weapons, an array of crimson laser dots converging upon both Wu Lingwei and Su Shiji. The latter immediately raised his hands, shouting, "Don't shoot, we are one of you." How embarrassing! Su Shiji seemed unfazed, as if the multitude of laser points dancing across him were merely the playful antics of a child driving, with one hand bracing the car window. Su Shiji's gaze was vacant as he stared outside. Wu Lingwei obediently twisted the car key, yet the vehicle merely emitted a symbolic grunt, refusing to ignite. Watching Su Shiji's fierce demeanor, Wu Lingwei stood frozen in place, already burdened by immense guilt for her wrongdoing. Witnessing Su Shiji's relentless reproach left her with a heart full of grievances, the only recourse being to let her eyes shimmer with crystalline tears. A woman's greatest weapon on full display. Wow! Wu Lingwei's wail was utterly terrifying, crashing forth like a tumultuous wave, leaving one utterly unprepared, seated in close proximity to Su Shiji, who was evidently a source of distress. My eardrums throbbed painfully, while the gazes of the surrounding multitude of police officers bore down upon me, akin to how one might regard a disgraceful figure in the martial arts world. Had it not been for the knowledge of Su Shiji's status, countless heroes would surely have emerged to draw their swords in my defense. Could you possibly exercise some restraint? Su Shiji pleaded, hands pressed firmly against his ears. I concede, I am intimidated by you. In a fit of frustration, Su Shiji struck the steering wheel with a fist, only for the stubborn engine to emit a frustrating rumble, the key refusing to turn. The car ready. Upon witnessing such an ingenious method of ignition, Wu Lingwei momentarily cast aside all grievances, her tears finally ceasing. Can we depart now, my young lady? Su Shiji's face was adorned with a facade of insincere smiles. Su Shiji clenched his fists behind his back, trembling with barely contained rage, yet maintaining his smile. I forgive you. Truly, after all, it is your first mission. Errors of this nature, though not particularly trivial, are forgivable. Entirely forgivable, that is sufficient. Wu Lingwei, satisfied, reclaimed the steering wheel and pressed the accelerator toward the police headquarters. Throughout the journey, Su Shiji found himself pondering a singular question. Why did I not eliminate her? Why must I exhibit such kindness? Chapter 13. The case is not as simple as it seems. As Mary, exhaling black smoke, slowly approached the city police headquarters, it was already 3 a.m. The elderly gatekeeper had been replaced by another junior officer on duty. Su Shiji smoothly parked the dilapidated Beetle beside a row of luxurious Ferraris. To be honest, such a juxtaposition could evoke feelings of inadequacy, yet Su Shiji appeared to be an exception. They entered the office of the paranormal division, oriented southward, flicking on the lights, which instantly illuminated the room. At this moment, the office was devoid of personnel, yet it was relatively tidy. Heaven knows if it was the handiwork of the division's staff. Each desk bore its respective nameplate, imparting a sense of territorial ownership. Wu Lingwei, brimming with excitement, began searching for her designated workspace, eager to see her name engraved upon the desk's surface. Alas, dreams are often destined for shattering. Ultimately, Wu Lingwei discovered her spot in the corner, 4 desks pushed together, atop which lay Su Shiji's black sleeping bag. Adjacent to the sleeping bag were 2 nameplates, clearly inscribed with the names Su Shiji and Wu Lingwei. Is this some sort of joke? This is blatant bullying, Wu Lingwei exclaimed in indignation. She imagined that even as a secretary, she ought to have a respectable desk, yet here she was, with her workspace effectively serving as someone else's bed. Enough complaining. No one expects you to last here. You should consider yourself fortunate to even see your nameplate. Last time a fellow had no chair at all. Su Shiji attempted to console Wu Lingwei. He removed his shoes and socks, without a word, sprawled over the desk, burrowing into his sleeping bag. What are you doing? Wu Lingwei inquired, perplexed. How did you become an investigator for the National Security Bureau in such a manner? After casting a disdainful glance at Su Shiji, Wu Lingwei resignedly walked over to an empty seat and began her concluding work on the computer. Thus, the once spacious office was left echoing only with the faint sound of a man snoring and the rhythmic clatter of keystrokes. The night passed in this manner, and dawn arrived unceremoniously. When that bothersome sun rose, one could only wonder how many office workers were cursing the universe for bringing forth such a blinding orb. Yet, without the sun, the earth could not possibly boast such vibrant life. However, those who toil day in and day out, often without financial compensation and enduring deductions for electricity, would hardly ponder such profound matters. They were simply aware that with the sun's ascent, the wretched routine of the 9-to-5 grind had once again descended upon them. In contrast, the colleagues of the Paranormal Investigation Department could be considered fortunate. They dined on the state's bounty, bearing the title of civil servants. However, even before 10 o'clock, one could hardly expect to see their figures. Suddenly, just as the mouse arrived at his station, he erupted into a manic scream. The sound was so ghastly that even the slumbering Su Shiji jolted upright in fright. As all eyes turned towards the mouse's position, they were met with a truly horrifying sight. Wu Lingwei had her head resting on a black computer keyboard, her screen still flickering with an editing software. Who has killed her? Iron Hammer uttered gravely. Who cares who killed her? My keyboard. The mouse anxiously yanked the keyboard from beneath Wu Lingwei's head, a copious amount of saliva already having seeped into the keys. Help, my limited edition Dell Supreme keyboard. How am I ever to use it now? The commotion roused the slumbering Wu Lingwei, and upon opening her eyes, she was taken aback to find a crowd surrounding her. Sister, why on earth are you lying on my desk? The mouse trembled, clutching the keyboard. I merely wish to type a report. My desk is not equipped with a computer. Wu Lingwei seemed startled, as if she had committed some grave error. With so many computers available, why did you have to use mine? The mouse's voice was tinged with a note of desperation. Do you have any idea how much this keyboard costs? There are only 3 in the world. One is used by the CEO of Dell. One is housed in Dell's own product museum, and the last one is now your drool-soaked pillow. As the mouse's indignation grew, Wu Lingwei's eyes brimmed with tears once more. Su Shiji, noticing the discord, leaped from his sleeping bag, rushing barefoot to stand protectively in front of Wu Lingwei. Have you lost your mind? It's just a broken keyboard. It's not as if it's non-waterproof. You could simply wash it and it would be fine. Must you berate her? Everyone is just trying to work. Su Shiji's reaction left the entire office in stunned silence. Even the agitated mouse stood bewildered, staring at Su Shiji as if he were a creature from another realm. Did you take the wrong medicine today? The mouse asked, his concern evident. All right, let us not make a fuss. Su Shiji, have you resolved the case? Seated not far away, Sima finally spoke up. Depending on the interpretation, if one were to refer solely to the case of Luo's infus, it has already been resolved, yet, this situation is proving to be more intricate than initially anticipated. Su Shiji's words prompted deep contemplation. Chapter 14, Even monsters have their gang leaders. Su Shiji's remarks plunged the entire gathering into confusion as they stared at him in bewilderment, attempting to grasp the essence of his words. Brother, I have but one question. Can we remain here? Iron Hammer posed the most pivotal inquiry. After the crowd dispersed, only the rat, Iron Hammer, and Wu Lingwei lingered around Su Shiji. Are you implying that this matter is far from concluded? Sima inquired softly. Perhaps the Japanese gentleman has grown weary and she has come seeking a change of palate, Iron Hammer speculated, only to be met with disdainful glances from his colleagues. Even if she were to seek a novel experience, there would be no need to deliberately venture into this central city, would there? It would be far more convenient to appear in coastal cities, dine, and depart with ease. Su Shiji continued in the vein of Iron Hammer's thoughts, lifting his grooming items as he made his way to the restroom. And then, the rat asked with curiosity, secondly, her actions are excessively ostentatious. Typically, when a monster arrives in an unfamiliar locale, it will operate within specified areas while maintaining a low profile. This is partly to avoid encounters with other monsters, who might claim their territory and leave them at a loss, and partly to evade drawing the attention of individuals like myself. As he spoke, Su Shiji had already stepped into the restroom. So, monsters have their gang leaders as well. Wu Lingwei mused, realizing she was gaining new insights today. Thirdly, at this juncture, the restroom resonated with the sounds of brushing teeth, accompanied by the gentle rush of water pouring for tea. Once these noises subsided, Su Shiji continued, thirdly, she uttered a phrase that piques my interest, the banquet of 100 ghosts. 100 ghosts dining? That sounds rather grand. Iron Hammer's exclamation drew yet another round of disdainful looks. Do you wish to investigate further? Sima asked quietly. At that moment, Su Shiji emerged from the restroom, stating, according to our protocol, we typically resolve one case at a time when it arises. What you propose remains mere conjecture, lacking substantive evidence. Shall we head out? I will drive. Hearing Su Shiji mention searching for someone, Wu Lingwei expressed her desire to accompany him. Given that it was daytime, she appeared unafraid. Wu Lingwei found herself utterly perplexed. Iron Hammer, come here. Su Shiji approached the imposing Iron Hammer, taking a couple of deep breaths as if preparing for exercise. Here it comes. Suddenly, Iron Hammer raised his namesake hand and tightly grasped Su Shiji's neck, lifting him off the ground, leaving his feet dangling before the eyes of all present. Wu Lingwei gazed in bewilderment at Su Shiji, whose face was turning purple, and could only discern the agony of impending death from his expression. Meanwhile, not a single person intervened. Those engrossed in games continued playing, those engaged in conversation persisted in their chatter, and those focused on writing maintained their pace. Even Sima, who held Su Shiji in high regard, merely observed the unfolding scene. The Hammer exclaimed with displeasure, yet the hand that gripped Su Shiji remained unyielding, leaving the frail Su Shiji suspended in midair. Let him go, he's going to die. Witnessing Su Shiji's pallid complexion, Wu Lingwei's eyes ignited with fury. Wu Lingwei, please calm down, Sima finally interjected, his gaze flickering with an unfathomable glimmer, as if he had discerned an unusual nuance amidst Wu Lingwei's fervent actions. Haozi, explain things to Wu Lingwei to prevent her from killing the Hammer. Kill me, I could crush her with a single hand. The Hammer felt its masculine dignity under siege. Could you please be quiet, let us wrap this up quickly. Haozi, growing impatient, primarily due to the need to clarify some perplexing matters, turned to the still-gripped Wu Lingwei. Listen carefully, the Hammer is not killing him, rather he is inducing a state of suspended animation. Suspended animation, if this goes on any longer he will genuinely perish. Wu Lingwei remained intensely agitated, for she was witnessing what appeared to be an act of murder. Could you please listen to what I'm saying? Haozi, disinclined to elaborate on the issue, continued, this so-called suspended animation is merely a means to transport Su Shiji to another realm. Without it, he cannot go. Where? Wu Lingwei seemed to be swayed slightly by this bizarre narrative. To the underworld, of course, who better understands these supernatural matters than the spirits themselves? Haozi's retort was compelling. Wu Lingwei finally ceased her struggles, gazing at the suspended Su Shiji, her heart heavy with discomfort, as if someone were grasping her own throat. When will he awaken? Wu Lingwei trembled as she inquired, her gaze fixed on the clock upon the wall, its long and short hands indicating the time, 10:43, 27:28 seconds. Chapter 15. Arriving at the 19th layer of hell with eyes closed, he felt his body enveloped in gentle warm water, gradually sinking downwards. With each descent, a profound sense of relaxation washed over him. The clamor of the city, the fatigue of life, the pressures of work, the tribulations of relationships, the challenges of child-rearing. All these human anxieties seemed to dissipate gradually. When his feet touched the icy ground, he opened his eyes. Before him lay a pitch-black world, devoid of sky, or perhaps, the sky was simply empty. In this somber environment, faint blue ghostly flames provided a modicum of illumination. In the distance, a magnificent skyscraper loomed over the land. Its imposing stature and exquisite all-glass facade would put even Shanghai's Jean Mao to shame. Such a scene had been witnessed countless times. Nothing could evoke surprise. He strode towards the building, familiar with the path. Mengpa, has your amnesia not yet subsided? It's Su Shiji, you've forgotten again. Su Shiji sighed helplessly, realizing this was his nth self-introduction. Perhaps due to prolonged exposure to Mengpo's soup, even her own memory had begun to wane. Shiji, that name rings a bell. Mengpa began to ponder seriously. Just then, a white shadow suddenly appeared beside Su Shiji. A strange figure materializing out of thin air, clad in a white robe. His stature was modest, akin to that of Su Shiji, equally slender. Most notably, he donned a white mask that obscured his eyes and nose, casting doubt on how he discerned direction or drew breath. The side of the mask bore a single black character inscribed in regular script. What brings you here again? The tone of this suddenly appearing figure exuded impatience. Heibai Wuchang, it seems you have grown paler once more, Su Shiji remarked with habitual sarcasm. Come along, the boss is aware of your arrival and wishes to see you. The figure clad in white, Heibai Wuchang, led Su Shiji across the renowned Naiha Bridge and into a building marked with the characters for the underworld. Upon entering the edifice, the interior decor was breathtaking. In the grand hall, soaring to an impressive 20 meters, crystal chandeliers hung from above, supported by columns crafted entirely from verdant jade. The floor was laid with golden bricks, and at the center of the lobby stood a reception desk. Four charming young maidens adorned in uniforms bearing the names Shishir Diaochan, Yang Yuhuan, and Wang Zhaojun greeted visitors with bright smiles. The walls were adorned with meticulously framed traditional Chinese paintings and calligraphy, the works of esteemed historical figures such as Tang Bohu and Wang Enshi. Far from ordinary, it was said that these masters, having passed a century ago, reincarnated as decorators in the underworld to gather these treasures, striving for the satisfaction of Yama in hopes of rebirth. One could only imagine that, should they encounter ink and brush in their next life, they would likely retch in revulsion, under Heibai Wuchang's guidance. Su Shiji entered an elevator. Despite the building's appearance seemingly piercing the clouds, if such clouds existed, the elevator's display indicated only 19 floors, each marked as an entrance to hell, with the 19th distinctly designated for office use. After pressing the button for the 19th floor, the two began their wait. Frankly, Su Shiji found Heibai Wuchang's manner of hospitality rather unappealing. This taciturn messenger seemed to harbor dissatisfaction towards him, as if the frequent passage of human souls to the underworld were a slight upon his dignity. In contrast, Bai Wuchang exuded a warmth that was much more inviting. She possessed an innate penchant for conversation, often divulging secrets unbidden, akin to casual banter. As for the duo known as Nyoto and Mamian, Su Shiji had yet to encounter them. Rumor had it they were high-ranking officials in hell, tasked with administering punishment to souls lost in thought. The elevator arrived at the top floor, which was as spacious as the lobby. The floor was draped in a crimson carpet, and the pale yellow walls displayed calligraphy and paintings at intervals, seemingly to emphasize the wealth of the proprietor. You should be quite familiar with this place. The boss awaits you in the office. Upon finishing, Bai Wuchang stepped back as the elevator doors gradually closed, leaving Su Shiji standing alone in the desolate corridor. He felt no anger at being neglected. For in the underworld, human souls were forbidden from retaining memories of their past lives, yet Su Shiji not only retained his memories but traversed this realm with the frequency of a market-goer. Inevitably inciting discontent. As he walked along the soft carpet toward the corridor's end, an uncanny silence enveloped him, as if even sound had been suspended in time. Before long, he arrived before an ornate wooden door adorned with gilded edges, upon which the words Office of King Yan were inscribed with clarity. He truly dreaded the thought of an audience. Su Shiji sighed and shook his head, then rapped upon the door. Come in. A youthful voice beckoned, granting permission to enter. Only then did Su Shiji dare to turn the doorknob and step inside. Chapter 16, The Grand Assembly of Spirits. Would you care for a drink? A tender voice emanated from behind the desk. Though the figure remained obscured, the surface of the desk was piled high with documents, blocking all sight. A mere glance at these papers revealed the extent of the occupant's busyness. With a snap of fingers, a crystalline glass materialized before Su Shiji, filled with a bubbling black liquid. I would like it chilled, Su Shiji continued. Another snap of fingers summoned a few sparkling ice cubes to float atop the dark liquid. This spectacle was more enchanting than any magic trick. Do you have business here? I am rather occupied. The youthful voice betrayed a hint of impatience. Yesterday, I dealt with a foreign demon named Luo Zinf. Su Shiji lifted the drink before him and took a sip, discovering it tasted akin to that of the mortal realm, perhaps even more refreshing. Congratulations, you're still alive. The tender voice was devoid of any enthusiasm, sounding rather feeble. In truth, she fancied herself formidable, yet she belonged to the most rudimentary class of minor demons. However, before her demise, she had uttered a word that piqued his curiosity, thus, he descended to consult the expert. With that, Su Shiji glanced toward the mountainous pile of files. For goodness sake, if you don't understand, consult a dictionary, or better yet, go online. You are aware of how busy I am. Each day, countless souls depart, and many more await their turn, all requiring my signature. It is utterly exhausting. The youthful voice was accompanied by the swift sound of pen scratching across paper. The Grand Assembly of Spirits. Have you heard of it? Lord Yen, Su Shiji posed his inquiry, and the sound of signatures ceased abruptly, plunging the room into a deathly silence. The chair creaked as King Yen finally emerged from behind the mountain of documents. To Su Shiji's astonishment, the ruler of the underworld, the arbiter of life and death, was none other than a little girl. She stood no taller than 1 meter 20 or 30, her fair face and large, expressive eyes exuding an endearing charm. Clad in a black lace bubble dress, her long golden curls cascaded like those of a delicate doll, complemented by a pair of refined golden-rimmed spectacles upon her face. She approached Su Shiji and gracefully seated herself on the sofa, contemplatively surveying the bare-chested young man before her. Did that demon truly say such a thing to you? A glimmer of skepticism flickered in the girl's eyes. Alas, it has finally begun. The little King Yen sighed in resignation, a look of adult-like fatigue crossing her features. What has finally begun? Please elucidate. My time is quite precious. Su Shiji was not keen on being throttled a second time. Originally, this was a secret not meant to be divulged to mere mortals. However, you are no longer considered one. The little girl's words could be interpreted as either praise or sarcasm, depending on how Su Shiji chooses to perceive them. The term yokai night parade originates from Japan, with the most comprehensive collection of yokai materials compiled by the Edo period's yokai artist, Toriyama Sekian. This is akin to our own strange tales from a Chinese studio. Both serving as records of supernatural beings, this gathering of yokai convenes for a shared purpose. Throughout Japanese history, such feasts have occurred more than once, each time resulting in great suffering for the chosen regions. Curiously, why venture all the way to China? Surely it cannot be a mere overseas excursion, Su Shiji remarked with habitual sarcasm. No, this gathering of myriad ghosts is different from those of the past. A big entity is about to emerge. The girl's tone was unusually grave, as if the temperature in the room had plummeted by 10 degrees. Daji, have you heard of her, the nine-tailed fox? Su Shiji's expression was one of incredulity. Had it not already perished? Slain by the celestial deities? No one can kill it, for it is unlike any other yokai. It is a being birthed from the very essence of heaven and earth, and even the deities are powerless against it. Thousands of years ago, due to its malevolence towards humanity, it was gravely wounded by the combined efforts of the gods. I know, it coincided with the fall of the Shang dynasty, as depicted in the Investiture of the Gods. Su Shiji had watched related dramas, however, the reality did not conclude so perfectly. The nine-tailed fox, despite its injuries, fled to the R kingdom. Even in its weakened state, it effortlessly unified the yokai realm of R. One might say the R kingdom was fortunate. At that time, the Nine-Tails was exceedingly feeble and was shattered by the alliance of monks in R, with its original spirit sealed beneath a stone of slaughter. Guarded day and night by eminent monks. As the girl recounted this, she reclined on the plush sofa gazing at the pristine ceiling, her eyes filled with resignation. Yet, all of this seemed utterly meaningless. The great deities above us have already calculated that the Nine-Tails has regained its strength over the millennia, and its original spirit has coalesced, merely awaiting an opportunity to break free from its confinement. What does this have to do with the gathering of myriad ghosts? Su Shiji inquired, perplexed. In Z country, specifically in Handong City, this opportunity for breaking the seal lies dormant in one of its corners. The so-called gathering of myriad ghosts is precisely to seek tools to rescue the Nine-Tails, facilitating its escape from the seal. What the King of Hell has just articulated is knowledge beyond the reach of even the lowest tier of deities. What is that? Su Shiji posed the critical question. Chapter 17. The soul of Su Mei. He reached for the cold cola on the coffee table, taking a sip that was still refreshingly satisfying. However, Su Shiji sensed a subtle difference in its flavor. He voiced his concerns. I have several questions. First, why must I retrieve that sword? According to your words, any random person from above would be more capable than I, a mere mortal. Why must it be me? The bloody reality made Su Shiji realize that even deities are not entirely benevolent. Attempting to take advantage of them is nothing short of a fool's errand. Yan Wang sighed softly, a trace of weariness surfacing on her delicate visage. Even deities bear their own burdens. She continued, as time progresses and humanity evolves, everything is gradually slipping beyond the divine's grasp. The rise of religion and the delineation of the divine realms are far more intricate than you might imagine. You see, the power of the gods is derived from humanity's belief in us. Look at the present world. How many truly believe in our existence? The gods feel weary. Those celestial beings, like Zeus from Sheila and God from Luoma, have already entered into an agreement titled Observation with the leaders of various sects, each governing their own domains. The accord stipulates that they shall no longer interfere in humanity's growth, regardless of the challenges they face. They must resolve them independently. And what are you doing now? Su Shiji inquired with a sardonic smile. You are unlike the others. You should recall that 8 years ago, in that car accident, you ought to have perished. Yet miraculously, you survived. From that moment on, you transcended the constraints of the three realms, and your name no longer graces the book of life and death. Otherwise, how could you traverse the underworld so frequently? No one knows when you will meet your end, nor how your fate will unfold. You are no longer under the dominion of any god, and collaborating with you does not contravene the observation agreement. Yan Wang elucidated. Then let us strike a bargain, Su Shiji stated solemnly, gazing intently at the deity, believing his proposal to be entirely reasonable. To negotiate with Yan Wang, Su Mei is no ordinary human. Su Shiji suddenly exclaimed, his excitement ignited by the mention of that extraordinary individual. Without her, would you still entertain any discussion of a deal with me? I have long since become one of your minions. Let us not dwell on that. The girl remained unperturbed by Su Shiji's rudeness. She snapped her fingers lightly, and an inverted hourglass materialized in the air. Your time is up. Seek me again when you encounter trouble. Savior sir. Suddenly Su Shiji felt a large hand grasping him from behind, forcibly dragging him through the sofa and wall, pulling him from Yan Wang's office. What an infatuated young man. Were it not for this, he would be much easier to manipulate. Yan Wang rose from the sofa, stretching languidly, and smiled as she approached her desk, where a plethora of tasks awaited her attention. Boom, another heavy thud of urgency echoed. The sound of the hammer nearly threatening to shatter the desk. 1, 2, 3. The rat had counted to 3 once more. The hammer was raised high. All right. Wu Lingwei could no longer contain herself, exclaiming loudly, are you going to kill him or save him? Is this how one performs emergency aid? Even if you revive him, you might just end up killing him. Step aside, step aside. How dare the little girl speak so? Hasn't he always been revived by me? The hammer's demeanor soured slightly. Hammer, just yield. Let Wu Lingwei take over, Sima interjected, casting a peculiar glance as he sought to mediate. You go ahead, you go ahead. The hammer stepped aside, conceding the position to Wu Lingwei. Wu Lingwei quietly approached Su Shiji, first taking a deep breath before initiating standard first aid procedures. She leaned in to listen to the area where his heart lay, confirming the absence of any signs of a heartbeat. Then, she stacked her hands and began pressing against Su Shiji's chest in accordance with the rhythm of her own heartbeat. 10 seconds passed, yet there was still no response. Consequently, she pinched Su Shiji's nose with one hand, lowered her head, and prepared to perform the fabled artificial respiration. However, at the crucial moment, it dawned on Wu Lingwei that she had forgotten something. Although her intentions were to save a life, she couldn't shake the thought that at the moment their lips would meet, her first kiss would be bestowed upon a man she had known for merely a day. All eyes in the office instinctively gravitated toward this pivotal moment. Just as their lips were about to touch, an unexpected incident occurred. What are you doing? Why are you pinching my nose? Su Shiji asked, bewildered, as he miraculously revived. You're finally back to life. Wu Lingwei leaped back 2 meters. Her face flushed even more than before. Tsushiji, did you uncover the information you sought? Sima, with one hand covering his mouth, inquired about the most critical matter. Not only did I find it, but it's also worse than I had imagined. It seems our future work here will be quite challenging. Tsushiji abruptly sat up from the desk. While he had confirmed his suspicions, it was hardly a cause for celebration. At that moment, hurried footsteps echoed from the corridor outside. Chapter 18, The Resurgence of the Peculiar Boom. With a heavy crash, the door to the investigation department was flung open by an urgent figure upon closer inspection. It was none other than the city bureau chief who had previously implored Sima to exploit him. He appeared somewhat haggard, dark circles under his eyes, clearly having endured a restless night. The chief approached Sima's desk with heavy steps, panting as if he had just completed a marathon yesterday. Last night, he managed to stammer out a few words. I am aware that a group of missing individuals was located last night, but the case is far from over. The murder suspect is still at large. We require time to continue our investigation. Sima spoke without a flicker of emotion, relieved that the monsters left no traces after their demise, thus simplifying the fabrication of lies. I was referring to a different case. Finally, the chief caught his breath, his expression one of such distress that it seemed he might weep. Around 3 o'clock last night, there was another homicide in the warehouse of the city museum. This time, the victim count exceeds that of the last incident, and it occurred within the city limits. This situation is even more troublesome, therefore, I hope you let us go, without waiting for Sima to nod or to extort further. Tsushiji leaped from the desk to the floor, striding towards the door. After a brief pause, Wu Lingwei finally comprehended that Tsushiji's let's go was directed at her, and she hurriedly followed close behind. It's rare to see him so motivated, Iron Hammer remarked, gazing at Tsushiji's retreating figure. He must have been dazed by your 2 strikes, Rat chimed in from the side. They once again found themselves in the underground parking lot, facing that same beleaguered Volkswagen Beetle. Tsushiji and Wu Lingwei set off once more, but unlike their previous leisurely stroll, this time they had a specific objective. The compact Beetle expelled plumes of black smoke as it made its way towards the city museum. Speaking of the city museum, it is one of the significant infrastructures newly constructed in Handong City over the past 2 years. The exhibition area has yet to officially open, remaining in a state of preparation. The staff within are busily collecting and inventorying a multitude of items intended for display. An opening ceremony was originally scheduled to take place in 5 days, but with the current commotion, it remains uncertain when it will actually open. By the time Wu Lingwei and Tsushiji arrived at the museum, it was already teeming with people. A substantial number of police officers had cordoned off the area, while various television station vans lined up in long rows. Groups of reporters crowded around the yellow barricades, raising their cameras high to capture the scene, resembling bothersome flies. Reluctantly, Wu Lingwei had no choice but to park the car by the roadside. Behind a row of interview vans, just as she prepared to exit the vehicle, Tsushiji gently grasped her shoulder. Are you truly intending to persist in this manner? His expression was calm. Persist in what manner? Wu Lingwei was perplexed. Are you determined to continue this line of work? Tsushiji sought to understand her answer, especially after learning about the Wan Gui event. You witnessed the situation yesterday. What we are engaged in is not the work of ordinary individuals, and it starkly contrasts with your desire to combat crime. Such horrific occurrences will likely become more frequent in the future. Perhaps you may even lose your life. His words carried a hint of concern. The young girls nowadays, they wouldn't shed a tear even upon seeing a coffin. Tsushiji sighed helplessly, stepping out of the car. He had done all he could. From now on, should anything untoward happen to Wu Lingwei, it wouldn't weigh heavily on his conscience. Or so he believed. As he stepped onto the grounds of the museum, Tsushiji felt a wave of revulsion wash over him, the air thick with a pungent metallic scent. He furrowed his brow, evidently unsettled by the stench. I'll inquire about the specific location of the warehouse first, Wu Lingwei softly remarked, surveying the vast museum. She wished to grasp the situation thoroughly before embarking on an investigation. Follow me. Tsushiji replied, leading the way, his hands habitually tucked into the pockets of his trench coat. Exuding an air of nonchalance akin to a stroll in the park, although he had never been here before, he instinctively followed the source of his distaste. After navigating several corners, they finally arrived at the entrance of a warehouse. A few police vehicles surrounded the area, and some individuals clad in white were seen carrying stretchers and transporting something. A mere glance at the blood-stained sheets atop the stretchers was enough to ascertain that the individuals within were beyond salvation. These stretchers were lined up on the vacant ground outside, and a quick count revealed over 20, with others still being transported. Witnessing such a scene, Wu Lingwei felt a tumultuous churn in her stomach. Fortunately, having eaten nothing since last night, she suspected she would have been violently ill otherwise. She fought against the wave of nausea and glanced at Tsushiji. You chose this path yourself, so don't blame me. With that, Tsushiji advanced towards the grim expanse filled with the deceased. A new case has once again emerged before Tsushiji, and the challenges have only just begun. Chapter 19, The stench of blood. Tsushiji approached the stretchers with a natural grace. Crouching down to casually unveil a blood-stained sheet behind him, Wu Lingwei instinctively turned her head aside, tightly closing her eyes. What lay before Su Shiji was a horrifying corpse, although he could already imagine the gruesome fate of the deceased prior to lifting the sheet. Witnessing it firsthand struck him with an overwhelming shock. The body belonged to a security guard, whose expression was more one of confusion than of fear, as if he had succumbed to death without ever experiencing pain. The cause of death was a brutal slashing, with a wound that began at the right clavicle and slanted down to the left flank. It was evident that this was a knife wound, inflicted by a sharp blade wielded by a skilled assailant. Su Shiji meticulously examined the shattered bones, the patterns clear and orderly, resembling the precision of a laser cutter. It appeared this was the work of a true expert. Observing such grievous injuries, Su Shiji muttered to himself, before covering the corpse once more with the sheet. Rising to enter the primary crime scene, he suddenly noticed Wu Lingwei still with her eyes shut. Trembling slightly, "What are you doing, sister?" Su Shiji sighed in exasperation. "Are you afraid of ghosts as well as corpses? How did you manage to graduate from school, brother?" "I'm a top student at the law school. Studying law, not anatomy in a medical school," Wu Lingwei retorted, but Su Shiji had no time to listen, having already traversed the yellow police tape surrounding the warehouse. Wu Lingwei could only silently follow suit. Upon entering the warehouse, the sense of revulsion intensified. However, merely glancing around was sufficient to evoke such feelings. This was a spacious warehouse filled with sealed wooden crates of various sizes. Now, dark red stains of blood were conspicuously visible on these crates and the floor. The officers processing the scene had marked out a white silhouette on the ground, recreating the position of the deceased at the time of their demise. Su Shiji slowly made his way toward the center of the warehouse, where the bloodstains were most prevalent, and the white circles were numerous. His gaze eventually settled upon a broken rectangular wooden crate. It was time for the preliminary report from the scene. Wu Lingwei exhibited remarkable efficiency as she approached Su Shiji with a white file folder. Regardless of whether he wanted to hear it or not, she began to read aloud. The specific time of the incident was approximately between 3 and 4 o'clock last night, with 14 security personnel, 20 porters, and the museum director among the victims. The cause of death for all was severe lacerations. The only object missing from the scene was an exhibit shipped from Japan. It was preliminarily determined to be a case of murder and robbery, with the assailants likely targeting the Japanese exhibit that arrived at 3:27 last night. The estimated number of assailants was over 30, highly trained and merciless. The security personnel had fired more than 30 shots, yet not a single assailant was injured, suggesting they may have been wearing bulletproof vests. Wu Lingwei continued to elaborate on her speculations. "Is there any information on the exhibits?" Su Shiji inquired softly, his gaze still fixated on the broken crate. Seemingly deep in thought, "There are detailed descriptions of the exhibits." Having turned the previous 2 pages, Wu Lingwei finally discovered the item Su Shiji had requested. It was the skeletal remains of a general from Japan's Warring States period. Upon this revelation, Wu Lingwei found herself engulfed in confusion. The exact era was uncertain, the name unknown, yet the remains stood at an impressive 2 meters. Clad in samurai armor and accompanied by a sword remarkably well preserved, recently unearthed by an excavation team in the mountainous regions of Japan, it had been transported here for exhibition before any detailed study could commence. "Do you think anyone would find that item intriguing?" Su Shiji's question plunged Wu Lingwei into contemplation, or perhaps a sense of melancholy. To mobilize a team of over 30 individuals merely to seize a Japanese skeleton? She mused that simply opening the nearby box and acquiring an antique vase or a painting would surely yield greater value. In a few succinct words, Su Shiji dispelled Wu Lingwei's impractical conjectures. Taking 2 measured steps closer to the cracked wooden box, a peculiar smile crept upon his lips as he remarked, "Have you scrutinized this wooden box closely? It has been violently split open from the inside." His comment rendered Wu Lingwei speechless, her expression shifting to one of gravity, as if she had grasped an underlying truth. Imitating Su Shiji's actions, she struck the steering wheel, but after 5 or 6 attempts with no response, her frustration mounted to the point of wanting to draw her gun on it. Of course, the car could not be simply shot at. One must wield the proper force. Su Shiji sighed, then struck the steering wheel once more, and the car obediently roared to life, more obedient than a dog. Wu Lingwei, feeling vexed, shifted gears and pressed the accelerator, the smoke belching merry, heading towards the city police station. "Let us first dine," Su Shiji suddenly proposed as the car approached an intersection. "What?" Wu Lingwei seemed not to have heard him clearly. "I said, let us eat together. We have not consumed anything all day. Are you not hungry?" Su Shiji was not fond of repeating himself. "Where shall we eat?" "I am not familiar with the restaurants in Hanong City." At Su Shiji's words, Wu Lingwei's stomach seemed to awaken like a clock, cramping with hunger to the extent that she felt capable of devouring an entire cow. "Let us go there." Following Su Shiji's gaze, she beheld a magnificent and ornate building on the right, the name Shangri-La boldly inscribed in clear Chinese characters. In a way, Wu Lingwei swallowed hard, her nerves escalating. "I did not bring that much money. Fear not, my dear. I shall cover the bill. You need not worry about payment." Su Shiji sighed in resignation, feeling an impulse to refrain from further conversation. That it is settled, with her principal concern alleviated, a smile naturally blossomed on Wu Lingwei's face. As the red light turned green, she deftly maneuvered the steering wheel and drove into the parking lot of the Shangri-La Hotel.